I would begin with saying that I'm a fan of mainstream media. I'm a journalist myself and I trust in media. Why? Because they know how to deal with information. They have their check and balances. I know it's not just one journalist produces some piece of news. I know there is an editor who probably went through that. If they had time, probably there was also a fact checker involved. So there are a lot of stages. They check the information. I know like in most cases, nothing that is not proved for now won't be published. So I follow mainstream media. Then, of course, journalists who work there. Now you can see that a lot of them work in Ukraine. A lot of them work in Poland, in Hungary, on the border where refugees come to. Maybe some stay in touch with people in Ukraine and so on. So journalists. Next, of course, I also follow Ukrainian media. This is the first source of information for me because still here media that can have different focuses.
Yeah.
Like they speak about Ukraine a lot, but sometimes they talk about something else, which makes sense. So I follow Ukraine media, yes. And now what I observe now, a lot of my colleagues in Ukraine, they started produce news in English. So please free to follow them. This is lb.ua. This is Babel. It's BABEL dot, I guess, UA. Then, as you mentioned, Kyiv Independent. Very cool. Then and VUA and v.ua. And I think a few others. So there are a lot of Ukrainian journalists writing in English, and most of my colleagues, they're still in Kyiv. They are working in the field. That's how you call it.
Yes.
They tweet a lot on Twitter. You can follow them, as you mentioned. Some of them are my friends. I know them. That's what you can do. Then also, but please don't follow people if you don't know them. Make sure it's a trusted source.
Yeah.
I know for now what I feel, everyone is an expert on Ukraine. Half a year ago, everyone was an expert on Afghanistan. Most probably people didn't know where it was on the map, but then they turned into experts. The same with YouTube. I am very skeptical about YouTube. No offense, Nathan, but
Hey, I YouTube is just one of the many sources. I get it. It's
what I see that most of the people on YouTube, they are not actual reporters. What they do, they read news, they read pieces published again in mainstream media, and then they just discuss it. So again, yesterday they discussed Afghanistan, COVID. Today they discuss Ukraine, and sometimes they say like something that doesn't connect at all. So I can't recommend, at least me, I am not watching independent YouTubers. Maybe you like some of them, but it's not that I prefer. So that's what you mentioned. I like actual reporting. I like a person is there on the ground and them know what's going on. It's not like just reading someone, he said, she said, and that's no. I want to see people's voices. I want to know what's going on. I don't want your opinion. I can make my opinion myself if I know what the facts are.
It is so telling, right, in terms of just where an entire nation can value media and how they can value media, because your position seems like it is one very much replicated throughout Ukraine, as we have just seen what the societal response has been to war, right? And how, right, where America has spent the past 10 years floundering in an information war that has just seen it poisoned in different ways repeatedly, with self-interest being at the core of people's media consumption. It seems very different when you say, my interest is solely in the story, and I will develop my opinion from there.
There are a lot of people who have their own interests, and they want to tell us, they want to tell you what to think. That's some of them are get paid, some of them get paid by politicians, and that's why I think sometimes you better not do that. Don't allow them to tell you what to think.
Yeah.
Make your own opinion of what you see.
Well, and that's a very powerful position to be able to take when, right, part of the fight that you're fighting has been against a global, what we thought was superpower up until 7 days ago. When anyway,
Yeah.
but the value in the honesty of information in the face of a institution that has challenged the rest of the world with disinformation, right? That is simply a Russian state, and I want to be very careful in the way that I talk, because this is very clearly not a war of the Russian people, right? That this is a war of a single person within a very condensed institution.
Yes and no, to be honest.
Okay.
If you follow recent polls, I don't know how those polls are trusted, because Russia is a dictatorship.
Yeah.
But from that, what I saw, 53% of Russians support an invasion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes and no. It was his decision. I believe it was Putin's decision alone. Most probably, I believe some people in his inner circle didn't support that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I believe they knew where would it go for them. But maybe it was his decision. But the thing is, a lot of Russians support him. I studied in Moscow.
Mm-hmm.
I have a lot of friends. I have relatives. My family lives. My father and his family lives there. And you know what? Most of them don't care or even support Putin. And sometimes I get not very nice messages from them. And what I saw on social media, you are right. Russia invests a lot in propaganda, but sometimes I just go and check accounts and see those are real people.
Yeah.
Those are real people writing to me, writing to Ukrainians, you deserve this. You fucking bitches, die. You deserve this. You deserve to be killed. You are calling us Nazis. That's Russian propaganda saying you Nazis deserve to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Real people. So I still hope. I prefer to hope that there will be some uprisings, more protests inside Russia. But make no mistake, some people, maybe a lot of people, support Putin. And I believe they also should be responsible for what is going on. There were elections in Russia. They were not really transparent. But I know that a lot of people supported Putin. A lot of people voted for him. And I think they should be responsible. They created this monster. Some people created by voting for him, and others created this monster by choosing to be silenced. A lot of my friends, and you know what? It's interesting. I studied in the best school in Russia. It's called Moscow State University.
Mm-hmm.
And do you expect that people there are kind of intelligents, elites, as people like saying it here? They are elite of in Russia. Most of them, most of my friends, they told me, "Oh, it's politics. I don't want to be involved. No, just I'm not going to protest. It's war, but I mean, it's not my business." If people who are supposed to be elites, who are supposed to be like the best among other people, they don't care. They prefer to be silent. They prefer not to speak out. And they didn't try to change the regime when it was possible, when it just started. If they didn't change the country, who can?
And I will stand very well corrected. I mean, it's a very lived experience to know where societal apathy lies with folks, and their just lack of care.
I don't want, to blame here the whole nation, the whole Russian nation. As a journalist, again, I totally understand the power of propaganda.
Yeah.
And I think the Western world didn't understand it till recently.
Mhm.
Only now they try to deal with that. But Russian propaganda is very powerful. I also see it on American social media. I saw how some people spread those messages that I can hear on Russian TV. It's
Mhm.
very powerful. And again, Russia is a poor country. Yes, because it invests a lot in the army, in nuclear weapons, in power, but it doesn't invest a lot in people. And some people are just poor. They live in a very distant area without internet connection, without having any access to independent information.
Mhm.
So of course, a lot of people, what can do, they can just watch TV.
Mhm.
It's true. So a lot of them are under this impression, under this influence of Russian propaganda. But again, a lot of people my age, they had access to social media, but they prefer to stay apart, to say it's not our deal. I mean, so if you don't want to change your country,
Mhm.
who are supposed to?
That is a point of entry for a special podcast. I wanted episode 100 to be a special podcast. I thought it was going to look differently than this, but this is, I think, very important. Episode 100 of the WTF Carbondale podcast, where we talk to interesting people about their interesting lives and tie it all back to this little old place we call home, Carbondale, Illinois. And this is where I mispronounce Deanna Butsko's. Perfect. If not perfect, close enough.
That's perfect.
As I am horrible with any and all names as possible.
That's perfect.
But I appreciate you taking the time to come in and really give a learned and capable perspective on the war against Ukraine right now, and being comfortable having this very exploratory and pertinent conversation. It's a heck of a jump from Moscow State to Southern Illinois University, but why? I mean, what brought you to Carbondale? Like, what was the story that led up to this point?
Yeah, so I worked as a political reporter, and then I realized that I need to study politics better. I was thinking about going abroad and study abroad, and I applied for Fulbright scholarship, which is a scholarship from the State Department. And when I was choosing a school, I looked into schools that cover Ukraine, where you have professors researching Ukraine, and SAU is one of that.
Mm-hmm.
We have 3 professors actually who work on research on Ukraine. 2 of them actually have been to Ukraine, so I think it's a very nice place if you want to research Ukraine. Actually, it's Carbondale, yeah?
Of all the places.
Definitely.
So what I mean was there an interest in bringing Ukraine closer to Carbondale specifically, like not just the value that you could necessarily draw from the institution and the place for yourself, but the value that you could commit to here as well? I mean, is that something that was of interest?
I mean, as a Ukrainian, as a journalist, I always hope for that. I would like to be an ambassador of my country wherever I go, and I'm happy to be an ambassador of Ukraine. Please forgive me, our ambassador in DC, but I'm glad to be an ambassador of Ukraine here and spread the word. I think it's also kind of an important mission because people in rural areas, they usually may know less about the world outside, and not only here but also in my country, I think in most of the countries. So I think it's an interesting experience that you go to a small rural community and spread the word and share your experience, your values, you compare how is it in your country, how is it here. So I hope I can do some good stuff also from here.
I'm going to take 2 seconds just to bring your mic up.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that.
No, it's not your fault. I've got expensive microphones on cheap stands, and so
Do you want me to hold it?
No. It's good. It just this wasn't tight enough, so actually keeping it from falling
okay.
down and just staying closer for you. So that makes.
Do you want me to repeat that?
No, you're great. No, you're great. Yeah, it's catching the audio well. I just want to make sure that it doesn't fall down over time because like I just at some point in time we'll be 30 minutes in the conversation and go.
That's fine.
My apologies. But the yeah, no, I mean, well, and it's SIU specifically in the idea of engaging in the rural identity, right? In that SIU for many years saw the rural space of Southern Illinois as a workshop to directly engage in the humanity of smaller population living, right? And just how that kind of plays back into a reality that isn't just something uniquely American, right? That like rural existence is something that is a global existence. There are there are many places around the world that are urbanized, but there are many more places around the world where it's just this small little old place with some people.
Yeah, I agree with you. Rural America, at least from that what I observed here, is very industrialized, even comparing to that countries that I've been to in Europe. A lot of people, they usually do farming, like private farming. All of them have some animals, and here it's like a town. So I expected it would be more like a village, more farmers and so on, but it's like a town. Life is going on. It's interesting, definitely.
Well, and I think here specifically in Southern Illinois, it's because you've got the economic travel center. So like SIU being a place where people can come from, miles around to work here and then take, a living back into smaller hometowns and communities. I can see where that may be, some difference about our particular rural space than others. The explanation of the Ukrainian colors is such a beautiful one, right? And
I just totally agree.
Is that something that you just look at and you think, and that's something that kind of guides your interest in that rural identity, is the idea of the blue skies over fields of wheat?
You mean our flag?
Yes.
Yeah, so what our flag means, yellow, it's down below, it's fields of wheats, and the blue one is our sky. And Ukraine produces a lot of wheat. We export a lot of that. Yeah, so it's very Ukrainian wheat farming, and
it's just a thing, a big part of identity.
Yeah.
As a whole. How did you get into just the journalism work overall? You talked about radio station and some other activity. Is this something that since you were of working age you've been interested in pursuing and being involved in? Like, is there an origin story in all of the interest of media?
I think I had the same experience as most journalists, at least my colleagues did. When I was a child, when I was a teenager, I believed in this idea of changing the world. I was very romantic. I was thinking, here you are, you can just fight corruption through your stories. You can go to the to the war zone and write about sufferings. I was kind of a kiddo who wanted to change the world.
Yeah.
But I also liked writing, and I wanted to combine both of the stuff. And journalism looked pretty good for me. Something that I would suit. That what I thought about. But then, of course, I saw the world, and I realized sometimes, you can't change everything, but you can just make small steps, an article by article, and trying to do something. But I always have I always had this idea of journalism as something bright and something that impact something that impacts the world.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the the power of story.
Yeah.
Is that something that has just come natural to you? I mean, to a generation of peers and colleagues. I mean, there are folks that understand the power of story, and there are some folks that just let the story go by.
Yeah.
And it just seems like you may have folks in your life that have inspired, hey, don't just let the story go by.
I think being a reporter is also a talent. I mean, seeing small details, seeing small things, seeing people's stories. And what I can tell about myself, I definitely was the one, and I'm still. So when people tell me something, my first thought is usually, it should be in the story. It's such a great story. I
Yeah.
should write about that. Can you give me a phone number? And yeah, I'm thinking that way. And I don't know, maybe I was born that way or something. But I agree with you. Story is powerful. But I also like listening to people. And I think it's another very important feature that every reporter should have, to listen to people's stories. And when I was growing up, I saw a lot of people. I heard a lot of stories. I have a big family with sometimes with tragic lives.
Yeah.
And I always wanted to write about them. So I like talking to people, actually, and I like talking to people, but also helping them. I think it's telling their story sometimes. It's the best way to spread the word.
Does that help make the task that you've kind of set out for yourself now feel a little bit more approachable? I mean, that you as we said kind of early on in the conversation, maybe a year or so ago, you had thought that you were going to be, a kind, very kind of one-to-one, what relationships you could develop. You could, in those relationships, be an ambassador for your nation just by developing personal relationships, by virtue of having to go all the way across the world and be in a place where you've got to make all new relationships. But now it's taking on more as you go out there and look to represent your country in wartime to a foreign audience that are going to have a lot of questions. So being comfortable in engaging in that conversation and how taking an interest in their story is going to help you bridge your own story and tell the story of your people as it becomes something that people want to contextualize and want to localize throughout the world, really.
Yeah, definitely. So I think people get attached to something, to news in general, when they see someone who is impacted by that.
Yeah.
So if there is a war anywhere is going on somewhere, there, like, where is that? What's going on, right? We have, I think, dozens of wars right now. Uh, but I think it's different when people see here is the person, and it knows what's going on, and it was affected by that. I mean, a person was affected by that. So I got that, and I told myself I want to tell people what's going on. I want to tell again stories of my friends and relatives. I don't want just to talk about politics, because you can go to DC for that. I want to tell about people.
What is that saying again? Because that's the second time you've said it. I need to better understand it.
I mean, if you want to get involved into politics, you can turn to DC, to news from DC. But I want to tell people what's going on with my friends and relatives in Ukraine.
Mm-hmm.
Not only facts, there are a lot of facts there, but stories of ordinary people
Yeah.
and their opinions, their voices. I think they are important right now. Um, Again, a lot of journalists, they already left Kyiv. I saw, that's what I saw in news. Some of them are outside the country right now, because it's getting more and more dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a lot of people still there, and I would like to tell people in Carbondale what they tell me.
Yeah.
And I'm in touch with them every day, and sometimes they tell me phrases, sentences that really touch me, and I can't let them die in our chat. I want to share them.
Yeah. That's an incredibly powerful thing. I mean, in what it means to tell this story in real time, right? And what, in a world where it feels like so much media is disposable, right? That it's there and then it's gone, and what does it matter, right? Where story after story gets lost, right? That finding some kind of permanence for those stories. That's a very strong idea.
I would like to tell people that war, it's not politics. It's not just politics. The war is people behind that. The war is a lot of people's fates behind that. A lot of people who don't know what to do with their lives right now. So yesterday, a friend of mine, she has two beautiful twins, boys. They are a year, I think so, and they just left Kyiv. It's getting not safe there. And yesterday, she started messaging me. She told me I'm crying, and she couldn't stop crying in hours. And she told me I don't have my life anymore. I don't I don't know what to do next. I don't have an apartment. Now she's staying with her friends. I don't know an apartment. I don't have an apartment. I don't have a job anymore. I don't want to leave the country because men are not allowed to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And I told myself I would never allow my boys to grow up without his father. I don't want to leave. And then she told me I don't want them growing up without me. I asked her, what do you mean? What if I die? They won't remember me because they're so little. And that's our stories behind the war. A, a lot of people, they a week ago they had their lives. They had normal lives, like people here in Carbondale. They just went to restaurants, they went to do their jobs, they had plans. They had tickets to theaters, to concerts. Now, 90% of them have nothing. And they have no future at this moment. They don't know what will happen next. And I can't imagine what they're going through, but I just want to tell people there are a lot of stories behind the war. Actually, 40 millions Ukrainians in Ukraine, and 40 millions of stories.
What are you losing in all of this?
What I'm losing? I'm losing my country, and it's very strong, and I hope it keeps fighting. I hope it wins. But have you seen the news? Have you seen a lot of buildings, a lot of apartments destroyed around the country? A lot of beautiful buildings. I said today during the rally, a lot of buildings turned into ashes. And when I come back to Ukraine, I don't know how many of them will be left, if any. I don't know if I will have my apartment still there back in Kyiv, if it will be there, if I will have place to come back. I don't know whom of my friends survived this. I don't know whom I will be able to hug again. I don't know my family members, if they will still be there, if I will be able to hug them, to talk to them. And actually, I'm asking this question myself every evening. I don't know if they will survive tomorrow, if they will survive this night. They will be there for me, talk to me tomorrow. I think I haven't lost anything at this particular moment, but I don't know what I will have tomorrow. I don't know whom I will have tomorrow. And I just mentioned it a minute ago. I don't have if I have the future, and I don't know how this future would be. And to be honest, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think right now about the world, life, life of my people, my life, and the world in general. While you are processing this, I would like to make a message to people in Carbondale. Please enjoy your peace and enjoy your democracy. I think we Ukrainians didn't really we didn't get it until 8 days ago, but peace and democracy, it's something very important. As I mentioned, the opportunity just to go to a restaurant and have dinner, sometimes it's a big thing. And also I read polls. They say that Americans, they don't appreciate democracy as much as they did 20 years ago, just because they learned to live. They think it has been always there and it will be always there.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the war generation, they knew you could lose it, but the current generation, it doesn't know. You enjoy, if you have something, if it's always there, you think it will be like that, and it doesn't come to your mind that you could lose it, that you can lose it. But democracy is something very, very important that you need to appreciate. So I would like to tell people living here, please appreciate every moment in your life, because 8 days ago my country was a very beautiful country. Now it's not, because there is a crazy guy who wants to get what he wants. Appreciate this and enjoy every moment of your life.
What is your experience with the concept of democracy and freedom and this idea of liberty that Americans toss around very casually, right? That it is used in all directions all too often with a very hollow ring to it. I think, as you said, with I won't say no sacrifice, I will say limited sacrifice, a different kind of sacrifice than what may have been had 80 years ago, 100 years ago, 250 years ago, so on. But, I mean, again, the way that we view these things is not the way that every society around the world views these things. How is your upbringing and life to this point kind of shaped your understanding of these things, and very much up into and including the last 8 days.
Ukraine is much younger than the USA is. I mean, the current country, because we have our history going back to 1,000 years back. But current situation, so Ukraine proclaimed independence just 30 years ago when the USSR collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't easy. It wasn't just we got our independence and here we are. No. I think it's like American history. You had to fight for your values, for for democracy, and America also democratized through centuries. I mean, democracy you have now, it was different when
Mm-hmm.
the founding fathers established the country.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's the same with us. So it has been just 30 years, but during this period, we had two presidents who tried to corrupt the power and to destroy democracies. And every time we went out to the streets and we fought for our democracies. That's why we are fighting now. That's why we are tough. We know that democracy has a value, that democracy has a price, and we are ready to pay that price, because for us Ukrainians, democracy, freedoms itself has a very important meaning, something I think one of the most important. How and why we are different from Russians. I think for now they haven't got this meaning. They don't understand why they need to fight for democracy. We definitely do. We definitely do, and we will never give up. And that what Putin hates about us. He see that we are free people. We are people of a free country, and we will never have a puppet president appointed by Vladimir Putin. We will never allow this to happen. Even if he conquers our territory, he will never conquer our hearts, our souls, and Ukrainian democracy itself. He can bring anyone he wants in Kyiv and say he's your president. It's not going to happen. We will never accept that person. We will fight. So sometimes these days I'm telling myself, even if Kyiv fails, our capital fails now, we will come back. Definitely, there will be guerrilla war. We'll fight and we'll have our president back, because current president Volodymyr Zelensky, he's a democratically elected leader. We, I think, I think actually that's why we are fighting so tough, because most, like my parents, my relatives, they went through through different stages.
Mm-hmm.
We saw when we started losing democracy, they got why we need to fight for that, and they still keep fighting because they saw these different perspectives. They saw when Ukraine was semi-independent,
Mm-hmm.
semi-democracy, and they saw this period when we became finally a democracy, and they know what they're fighting for. And that's what I mentioned. When people live in a prosperous world, when they live in a democracy, they I think, they just they're starting losing the point and the importance. But I just hope there will be no democracies failing in the world more. I really hope that each democracy that we have right now will be prosperous, whatever, and Putin or any other crazy dictator won't destroy democracies anymore.
This is phenomenal. Ah, gosh, sorry. Gather my composure. On a lighter subject, that's that really, it helps to contextualize it so much, right? That the generation that is now is the generation, and covering multiple generations, the folks that exist now are the folks that have had to work through the process, and they didn't just do all this work for nothing.
Yes.
Right. You don't put it, and it's not about this idea of an individual job or a profession or whatever else, but this was an entire society, an entire nation's lift itself to be self-guided, and that clicks. That makes sense. The lighter subject, some of the guidance around how people are, because people are now digesting a lot of media that, like we said, Americans couldn't really navigate to most countries that aren't the United States on a map, but we struggle getting to our own states a couple states over, right? I know where Missouri and Indiana are, but that's because they're neighbors. So a question that I have for you that is going to sound very, very simple, very silly, but I also want to know if I'm kind of trending the right direction. When I read something and it's described as an oblast, and if I'm pronouncing it correctly,
Yes.
Is that like a county would be here?
No, it's more like a state.
More like a state? Okay. You can talk as I'm correcting this camera that I just smacked with my hand.
So
You're good.
oblast, I would say the correct translation, the more correct, is like region, because the United States is a federation. Ukraine is a unitary state. It means that regions have more rights and more freedoms. It's more centralized.
Okay.
So when you say states, I mean, it sounds like something more independent, having more rights, more opportunities, and I mean, that's American idea itself. But Ukraine, as it is more centralized, so it has different regions. Yes, but if you compare to American geography, oblast is state,
Okay.
and then we have rayon, which is, I guess, a little bit difficult to pronounce. It's county. It's more like a county.
Gotcha. And then from there, what would be the federal, the full territory of Ukraine. Is that structure where there is kind of more autonomy at that old, and again I'm just going to say them and I'll mess them up as I go along.
No, you're doing very good.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I just ever since reading a tweet on the correct pronunciation of Kyiv, I've started to understand language as a tool in this whole of activity that the closeness of Russia and Ukraine linguistically matters in how we talk about Ukraine and how we just refer to things, because it could be more of a Russian translation, which in this case would be less appropriate, or it can be closer to a Ukrainian translation and pronunciation, which is in itself just basic supportive language for folks. Am I interpreting that even close to how I need to?
No, I think you are totally right. Now there is an ongoing war going in different spheres. One is going like military war, the other is informational war, and here is, I don't know how to call it, maybe brand war of branding.
Yeah.
That's very important. And when Russia invaded Ukraine, I noticed that a lot of American media, like all of them, they finally changed the pronunciation, because previously it was more common that people used Kyiv. It's Russian. That's how you say. That's how you name Ukrainian capital in Russian, Kyiv. But if you're speaking in Ukrainian language, it is Kyiv, which may be difficult to pronounce. I get it. You don't have such sounds. And then also finally they changed the spelling. And it's important for us. The same with, have you heard this thing about Ukraine and the Ukraine?
Yes. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
The same. The Ukraine, that's how the Soviet Union tried to name our country. Like when the Soviet Union existed, they wanted to kind of show that Ukraine is not really a country, not really independent, so it's like the Ukraine, like the region. And now our Ministry of Foreign Affairs, like State Department here, they did a lot of work to promote this, that we are Ukraine, not the Ukraine. And a lot of things now become about politics. Yes, you're totally right.
Well, and I just, that's one of the things that as a media maker, right, has intrigued me very much. So is that one of the false arguments that Putin has made is in relation to Ukrainian identity, right?
Yes.
And how this immediate just snap of everybody, right? Just from common citizens on the ground all the way up to the president and everybody in between has a sense of how they are supposed to communicate, what they are supposed to communicate, and the value of what they are communicating, right? And in a way that I don't think any other country or culture around the world really gets. Like this is a master class in communication.
Yes.
It's quite just for, sorry, go go ahead. It's just very impressive.
Yes, and Putin hates this idea that Ukrainians are a different nation.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has this Soviet way of thinking. That's how a lot of people thought back then. Like, we are one nation, we are brothers, and then you just come to your country and kill your brothers. That's very logical. That's Putin. He hates this idea. It's true. We had a lot in common. I mean, we had history that united us. That's true because we are neighboring countries. It's always like that. You can't avoid that. Also, actually, Ukraine was a colony of Russia. Russian Empire colonized Ukraine, but we always had these people fighting for our independence at different stages of our history. I mean, if they fought, if they wanted to be independent from Russian Empire, it means they had different identity. So he keeps saying that. He will keep saying that because he has this imperialistic way of thinking of I'm here, the center is Moscow, and you Ukrainians, the same with people of Belarus, which is another neighboring country a country which Putin uses right now to fight against Ukraine, and he also invades Ukraine from the north of Belarus. And I think he thinks like that about all post-Soviet countries, except for a few that are already part of the European Union. He is a KGB man. I think he also learned a lot of Soviet propaganda there. That's the way he thinks. But I think through our history, people will prove the world that we are not the same nation, first, and second, we are not brothers because you don't kill your brother, and I just can't get it.
Well, the reserve and arguably to some extent, right, there is the filtration of it. I'm sure not everything is kind and positive around the capture of soldiers in war. But for the time being, I mean, you look at things like the appeal of Zelensky directly to Russian mothers.
Yes.
Right. The idea that when a soldier is captured, that they're being given some level of humane treatment.
Definitely.
And trying to build that bridge back to their home and say, mother, ask for your son to come back. Right. That there's at least some sort of civility in the treatment of Ukrainians to Russians in this sense, because even if you're going to be my enemy now, I'm at least going to give you a chance to be human on the way out, which I think is a more than gracious position.
Yes, I'm proud of of Ukrainian army and of President Zelensky, our Ministry of Defense, how they treat Russian soldiers, because actually there is still international law there. You can't humiliate people whom you captured.
Yeah.
But I'm also impressed by Putin again. So, I'm telling myself, okay, I know he's a monster. There is nothing worse he can do. But then he keeps doing that. What do I mean? I mean that according to our ministry, there are were already 9,000 Russian soldiers were killed. So first, Russians deny that. They say there were just 500. Okay, let's not discuss numbers. But they are not coming back they're not taking them back. They don't want. I know there was in press they saying they don't want to scare people. So if they bring 9,000 dead bodies to Russia, of course people will be scared. And then would happen what you said. Mothers would go to protest to stop the war. They're scared. But what's going on? Those bodies are laid down somewhere there in fields. Now Ukrainian ask the Red Cross, please come. We can't do that right now. We can't deal with your bodies right now. They asked Red Cross, please talk to Russian, talk to someone in Russia, ask them to take their bodies back. They say no, we are not going to do that. They sent those soldiers, and if you saw in news, a lot of them are just young.
Oh my God. They're children.
Young boys, they're children. They send them there. They don't give them enough water, food, and then they go to Ukrainians and asking for food. Russian soldiers, invaders, they ask people to give them food, and they even don't want to take their bodies. What's kind of a nation? What's kind of, I don't know, elite is that? What's kind? Military people. Why? I can't understand what's going on in their heads. This is so embarrassing. And yes, we are doing a step further. Ukrainian government, they try to talk to them. They try to do something, and they treat Russian soldiers, well from that what
as good as you can for somebody who is coming in and indiscriminately shelling entire cities and civilian populations.
Yeah.
That's as kind as you can put it in that sense. I've seen the videos with expired rations, right? That are over 5 years expired being sent out into the field, right? It's more than just we're just, they're just deserting and what have you. They're wholly unprepared, because the idea of Putin was that, this is 2 weeks. I'll march in, I will take over, and that's that.
Yeah.
Right. And completely unprepared for a people's spirit that is there.
And here we go back again to this idea that he thinks we are one nation. And I think that was his idea. He thought we are one nation, and Ukrainians will be glad to welcome us, to see us there, and they will help their soldiers. But excuse me, so you're dropping bombs and then saying, please welcome us? Yeah. That's not how I understand hospitality.
Well, the Ukrainian humor.
It helps us a lot.
Oh my God.
There are so many memes right there.
It is. So I read early on, just started to read about Odessa. And Odessa as a place of humor through the ages.
Yes.
And what was it that I saw? Somebody said, "Oh, well, what is it true that people in Odessa only answer questions with questions?"
That's a joke. Yes.
the loose translation. Right? Yeah. Who told you that? Right, and that feels very classical Abbott and Costello here in the States, kind of vaudeville slapstick comedy feel, and it's just like, wow, right? What are the important components, not just of Ukrainian nationality, but the idea of humanity in general. Right, and it really puts on display how important humor is in just the human existence, right? That even in the throes of war, that the way to manage through that is to have some kind of spirit about it.
Yeah, it's a black humor right now, but I think it helps. Yesterday, I watched a famous Ukrainian comedian on our TV, and he said the same things. He referred to Ukrainian celebrities. He said, "Please stop crying. If you want to cry, go somewhere there, cry, don't record it, don't post it on social media. We need humor right now. That's what can help us. And he made jokes about Russians, but I agree. I mean, what I observe now, so it's been more than a week. People are fighting. It's difficult to to be always positive, believing in your victory. People start losing this positive way of thinking. So I think humor comes here right now and help us to move further. Sometimes it's dirty jokes. It's difficult to process, but it really helps. And sometimes I'm just on my Facebook, which is used like Twitter in Ukraine. And people post jokes and like, oh my God, you still have power. You still are able to joke. I mean, we are doing okay. We are doing okay if you are still joking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not to downplay the severity of physical consequences and death and destruction and the reality of war. But what is morale if not some sort of happiness, right?
Definitely.
That you can't sit here on one hand and say, oh, well, Ukraine has great morale right now, and then not also acknowledge that morale has to come from somewhere, right? That despair is not what develops morale in a particular sense.
Yes. I think people try to help themselves different ways they can. First way is anger and hate, like it or not. Please forgive us for that. But I think for most, not for all, but for most people, hate and anger is something that help people right now. Hating your enemy. It's not something that God taught us, but it helps when you may die tomorrow or even today. This anger helps. And then there are definitely some positivity, as you mentioned, your optimism, your belief in your army, in strengths of the army, being brave yourself, doing some small things, but helping your nation, and humor, last but not least.
You got it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry. No, you looked at me for a second. You were like, "Why are you smiling? Are you smiling because I got it wrong, or smiling because I got it right?"
So in this whole situation, I need time to process things.
Yeah, absolutely.
But humor, helps.
No, you've got a very fluid thought process. I mean, it's very evident. I don't know how many languages do you speak?
Like fluently 3.
Okay. And then, I mean, just to think, right? The old joke here is, what do you call somebody who speaks 3 languages? Trilingual. What do you call somebody who speaks 2 languages? Bilingual. What do you call somebody who speaks 1 language? American. That's
That's funny.
I am a shining example of that. Of all of the resources and access, to opportunities to learn languages that were not English, I failed to do anything. But then my good friend Rep, he's world-traveled individual who speaks English, speaks Russian, speaks other dialects, around Russian, and it just comes from having lived in St. Petersburg for a good chunk of his youth, but also just being willing to go out there and engage in the process of language learning and being okay with just doing the bits of stumbling that you have to do for it to just work out. Right? What's it matter if you get it exactly right, so long as somebody understands your intent?
I mean, we need language to understand each other, right?
Yeah.
If you can understand me, I'm doing well.
Yeah, exactly. You've nailed it. What have you learned English, or have you spoken or engaged with English since a young age, or is it something that you picked up later in life, or?
So we have a little bit different way of schooling in Ukraine. Most of the classes you have, they are obligatory. They are required. You need to take them. And like it or not, English is one of them.
Yeah.
So I had it from the second grade, and now the English is required from the first grade. So when you're a small kiddo, you just start your school, you start learning English.
Yeah.
Then you have it in your university, and then I came here, I learned a few new words. So it's obligatory.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, there's in terms of just the communication gap in this instance is not the same as it may be for a lot of Americans who would otherwise look at a world event and say, oh, well, because these people can't communicate to me, I don't have to care as much. It's a pretty big, thought that exists there, but simply because of it being part of an educational requirement from a young age.
But you know what I found interesting here? When I went to Florida, I saw a lot of people speak Spanish. I had this feeling that all people are bilingual there. I think it depends where you live and depends where you need the language. For example, the other language I learned is Italian, but now I don't speak a lot, so I'm not fluent in that anymore. If you need a language, if you in this if you interact with these people, you can't survive without that. You will learn it. We learn a lot of abilities through our lives and life, and I think language is just one of them. So don't say bad things about Americans. A lot of them know more than one language.
No, that's fair. I do too much shouldering of the thought of our part of America and some of our struggles with picking up more than one language. But as you say, it's not as necessitated in our everyday life. So it's a skill that may just go by the wayside for sake of other skills. Where all have your travels taken you to? You talked about. Has there been a point in time where you've spent time in Italy where you've been able to use the language, and where else because Fulbright scholars, right? A big part of being a Fulbright scholar is already having some components of being traveled, just because that helps better qualify you, knowing that you can navigate a space that is otherwise completely unknown to you.
There is one good things living in Europe. Not one, two good things. That's what I meant.
Only two. That's it. Europe. You heard it. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean about traveling.
There you
go. So first thing that Europe is comparatively small if you compare it to America.
Oh yeah.
So, for example, I was born in Western Ukraine, and my city is literally on the border with Slovakia, another country. So it takes me just a few hours to cross the border. I mean, there is you need to be checked, but everything is very close. It takes you 1 hour, 2 hours to fly from my country to Paris, and here I need 5 hours to get to Chicago, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first good thing, and the second is actually money. So I showed my friend that, hey, come here, look, here you can buy a ticket costing $6 from Kyiv to Paris. How about that? So Europe, I think, did a great job. They have a lot of low costs. Those airlines where you don't pay much, and they do a lot of sales. So sometimes it's like that. You can. You need just $10, 10 euros. We're speaking about Europe, to fly somewhere between cities. That's something. I've never seen it here. It's difficult to find so cheap tickets.
Oh yeah.
It makes it easier. So of course I visited a lot of countries in Europe. I don't know, Spain, Netherlands, Hungary, Italy, Greece. Greece is my favorite country after Ukraine, of course. No, the third one. The second is the United States.
You don't have to butter us up. We'll like you either way. It's okay.
Thank you. So if you live in Europe, and if you are at least a middle class, you can afford traveling. Also, hotels are much cheaper than here. When I was a student in Ukraine, I traveled a lot. I didn't have a lot of money, but I could travel. Here, I'm a student now. I have a student scholarship. I'm like, okay, I need to stay in Carbondale for a few months until I can travel the next time.
Well, and I guess the difference in traveling in the States versus traveling in Europe, from what it sounds, I have no experience. I'd have to refer to Rep. on that component is that there's a little bit more process if you have to get through things if you're just traveling from country to country, but that the expense is not there. Where here, there may be expense, but the travel across states and throughout the United States is just kind of wide open. And go ahead, sorry.
That's not true, because there is visa-free regime in United States, inside the countries, and now we Ukrainians also have a visa-free regime with them. So if you're going with your car, it may take it takes time, but I mean you don't need anything. If you're flying, it's like here you go, they just you do security check and that's it.
In and out. That's phenomenal. That's phenomenal.
So anyway, traveling in Europe is easier.
Sorry. I didn't mean to make it sound as if it were an extensively difficult thing, especially for when you're actually living there. This is phenomenal. Was there? Did you always have you had a natural interest in travel? Is just and I was reading it was I think maybe a trucker from the UK online talking about just being surprised at Americans just lack of time in general that they're afforded to go do things, right? So whereas a trucker in the UK may say, I've got a month off a year, I have to go on holiday, I have to go somewhere and experience something, and that's something that we don't really have so much in this country. That our simple lust for travel is gobbled up by a lack of time away from our tasks, our work, our whatever.
Yeah, I think it comes to the whole American culture. So I have an American boyfriend, and he told me that he never traveled to so many places until he met me, and he hasn't visited so many states before. And okay, you're 28 years old, and you went just to 2 states in America? I was surprised, but. I think, again, I see 2 things here. First, it's American culture. It's culture of work.
Yeah.
You really appreciate work. I know you like working.
I don't know that appreciates the word. Forced to do work?
Yes, that was my point. I mean, it comes that life here is very expensive. You need to work all the time. You don't have this work-life balance.
Yeah.
That's what I observed. But Europeans are very tough on that. Some countries turn into 4 days work week, and they travel a lot. Yes, I agree with you. So I think some people are just working. Others, maybe again, traveling, it's not in the culture. People just don't see sense in that.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain it, but so wherever I have a few bucks somewhere in my savings, I try to travel because I think it's the way to understand the world. I learned so much from traveling. You will never learn it from just watching news or reading.
Yeah.
I mean, I would like to spend my entire life just traveling if I have a chance.
Oh, you're going to take that journalism experience and become a travel blogger. No,
I was thinking about that.
You're like, how wonderful it would be if I could just turn in all of my moral sensibilities and just go rest in different nice chateaus around the world. But, you've got more, I don't know, you find yourself as having more purpose than the easy stuff in life.
Yeah.
That's an open question. I'm sorry.
I can see that.
You're like, I guess I do. I got to have a little bit of interest and purpose. How did you meet your boyfriend here in Carbondale, or is he from elsewhere or
from elsewhere? He lives in New York.
Oh wow. Okay, so that's a hike. So how is that working? Just here, has he traveled to Carbondale? Have you traveled back to him, or
okay, guys?
You're like, listen, I don't want to deal with this stuff right now. No,
guys, no offense, but I invited him once. He came here once,
and he was like, "I'm good."
Yes, yes. He said, "I'm not coming back." No offense, guys, but I discussed I discussed that with him. I found it very interesting. He said that he feels uncomfortable wherever there are no tall, high buildings.
Uh-huh.
He can't he feels like something is off when you just have
Not
houses.
buildings.
Yeah, houses, not apartments.
So does he live in New York City or okay? That's so interesting to me, right? Is even that rural metropolitan divide
Yeah.
in the United States and people's comfort zone, because again, it's just like okay, well, there's there's such different landscape and the difference between people's just comforts being surrounded by, my gosh, concrete versus trees.
Yeah, and sometimes also differences in language. Again, he told me that he has difficulty with understanding people from some areas, some accents, and I like, oh, but it's one country.
No, that's so very true. And even we too often look down on folks for the way that they speak English in this country, but the reality is that there is such a variation of language across all geographies. It's just like get over it, folks. So long as people are decent to you, just be decent. Like, you don't have to speak just like you speak.
Yeah, but so my first shock was when I went to Tennessee, and a guy told me something, and I literally understand 0 words. Like, what's going on?
Did you ultimately get it figured out, or did it take an additional translator from English to English to Southern English? No, sorry.
I think then I got the idea because of the whole conversation, but yeah, it's difficult.
That's phenomenal. Has it been relatively manageable navigating Carbondale so far in terms of just being able to communicate with folks? Is our dialect digestible, I guess is what I'm asking.
Very digestible comparing to Tennessee.
We've just caused an international incident with Tennessee. I'm so sorry.
No, I like Nashville. It's great.
Wait, so you said Greece is, third favorite. We'll accept it as second favorite still. That's cool. But what have your experiences been like? I mean, is there, I guess, let me rewind a little bit here. In terms of more living rather than just kind of the short-term visits. I mean, you've talked about studying in Moscow. Are there other places that stand out where you've gotten to do more than just visit, but really live? That are some places that you feel like you've carried with you, as you continue to grow as a person professionally and in academia.
I mean, for now, at least I liked now. I'm not sure I'm in mood of traveling, but I like traveling here. And I was also surprised that America is so different from state to state. I didn't expect that. Sometimes it feels like I'm traveling through Europe, through different countries.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to Texas and then to Florida, which are nearby, but completely different worlds, right? And then my favorite city, I should say city because it's not a state, is DC. I felt very comfortable. If I have a chance to choose, I would like to live there.
Yeah.
But I like this. I like this about traveling in America, living in America, that you can just move to another state and you have a totally different life, a totally different experience, a totally different food. The way people speak, the way people engage. And I think it's very cool about America.
America thanks you.
Welcome.
Oh my gosh, I'm trying to think. No, this is good exploratory side of things. Are you still close with family? I know you had talked about kind of family being, having its ups and downs, and some very intense stories within family. But do you still have a familiar relationship?
With my family.
Yeah.
Of course. I mean, you see the situation. I'm in touch with them every day. I check my sister every hour. We don't know what happens next. We don't know which cities Putin chooses to bomb next. It's like, You live in this complete house and chaos, and you don't know what happens tomorrow, but you also don't know what happens in an hour.
Yeah. The just the very real prospects of what happens next. You know, I mean, the permanence of story, kind of cycling back to that, you know, you understand that the stories that are the individual stories in which you're engaged in right now are represented across an entire society of peoples, right? That the stories that you're having back and forth in chats with friends and family and all sorts of connections, right, is representative of what 44, is it 44 million, give or take? Or
I mean, 40, I think so.
Okay. 40 million people are going through right now. I appreciate I don't know, understanding the value of that story. I mean, just watching so many people at once understand the value of their own story. Like they can't just go out there and you know, fight a quiet fight, right? That it's not just, oh, well, it's just ours to bear. That it becomes everybody's to bear when it becomes visible.
Yeah.
That visibility is important. That's why I appreciate you doing this and just being comfortable sharing your stories and your feelings with folks.
Definitely so many stories there, and sometimes I even don't know where to start. I mean, I have friends who joined the military, and like they were journalists, they were teachers yesterday, and today they're soldiers. Feels like everyone is involved, and those people who can't fight, they volunteer, they help refugees, they help people in need. And I've seen on my social media that people post all the time. There is an old granny living in our apartment. She's alone. She can't go for shopping, and the next minute someone commands, I'm coming. Just give me the address. I will deliver food. It's something that really impressed me. People are united, and I hope that no one is left alone right there. People help each other. People support each other. I mean, it's a very bad situation, but there is so much great things I see these days about Ukrainians.
And how do you feel about your responsibility now? I know we touched on it a little bit, but I mean, you're not just sitting idle and observing. You're taking the actions. You're working. You talked about. You said it was Jen.
Jen Thompson.
Who's kind of helping you do this? But I mean, really, obviously, you have to take your own charge in your own life to do these things. You know, how has being able to find actions to follow through on helped you to navigate this process in only a weekend of what we don't know will be, you know, we how long the war itself, but rebuilding following, right? And I'm rambling at this point. I apologize. I'm just processing through myself as I think here, but how you know, how you find your work now to be your commitment to the cause as a whole, to, you know, to a glorious Ukraine.
This is something that helps me to hold on and to keep going, because like most like Ukrainians now, what they're doing, if they have a free minute, they read news, and that's what I am doing here. I'm constantly reading news, and this is also a distraction, but my way to help, to do something very small, but to do something here. It's I would say it's my way not to go crazy. It's it's stressful to live and to read this in news and checking the news every minute, saying if your city, if your town, if was bombed right now, is this that apartment where my aunt lives? So I think this doing something here helps me to move to move on and to stay mentally more stable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking what I can do. I see two ways for me being here and help my nation. First of all, doing what I'm doing right now,
Mm-hmm.
to speak out, to tell what's going on, and to be this ambassador again, and to share with you stories that I heard myself. And second, what I'm trying to do fundraising. Ukraine is not the richest country in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and all we had now we spend for the military, for war, and definitely we will be running out of money soon. Also, every war, I don't know if you can name any war that hasn't led to humanitarian catastrophe.
Mm-hmm.
That's what's going on in Ukraine right now. It's getting worse and worse every day. There are no food in grocery stores, not because we are running of food. A lot of countries also sending them, but Russians are constantly bombing cities. Sometimes it's not possible to deliver
Mm-hmm.
to deliver food to stores. So I'm asking myself what people will do when there is no food in stores. Definitely there will be no money very soon. War costs a lot,
Mm-hmm.
a lot. So I would like to help with fundraising. I know there are a lot of funds helping Ukraine, but there are also funds established by my friends.
Mm-hmm.
And I know they told me that they need money. A lot of them had work, as I mentioned yesterday. Okay, not yesterday, 8 days
Mm-hmm.
ago, but now they don't, and they don't know how to help those people in need they were helping. And they asked me also to do fundraising here, and I hope I will do that.
Well, and I think this is, one of those first steps. I hadn't thought about this as part of a possible outcome of our conversation, but I think it's very reasonable that, we work to get you connected with some of the folks, because one of the things, right, that in a in the culture of American charity, and benevolent giving and all that fun stuff, right? That there's kind of two sides to it. There is the side where people feel as if they are simply giving to an organization and handing off the means of their money to a large studious institution that will gather it and work it out. Or there is the other side where they feel as if they are giving directly to folks who are impacted through the crisis that's being experienced. So I think that you're going the right direction in terms of, how do I help? Okay, I can fundraise on an individual basis and be able to point this money back to folks and build that relationship between a community of people here who can and want to help in some way, shape, or form, as well as the folks who actually need the help in Ukraine right now.
Yeah.
So I think you're taking the right steps and looking at it the right way.
Thank you for helping me spreading my ideas and also needs of my people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I thank you for being comfortable coming here and sharing them for episode 100 of the WTF Carbondale podcast. Very meaningful. There will be information below wherever this is posted for information about, and again, I'm sorry, I'm just, Deanna, thank you. And nod it out, even if I'm wrong in my pronunciations. I'm just real self-conscious about the way that I pronounce people's names. I apologize.
That's okay.
But for Deanna's friends, for the folks that you can follow and get a story, a live story in real time, as well as the folks that need the help and how you can contribute to help them. So that's episode 100 of the WTF Carbondale podcast. Please take time to read the post and look for the different pertinent pieces of information here. And this time, folks, I don't even know if the sign-off feels right, but it is where it is. So have a good one in whatever way that you can.